Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 60 in this series. It's a nice round number. I like 60. I like it when we get to the 50s and the 60s and maybe the 70s. That could be cool. Anyway, welcome. If you're new, it's nice to meet you, and if you're returning, it's always lovely to see you. So thanks for coming back to join me. I'm coming to you from Urbana, Illinois, where I am a professor at the university there. And if you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast mostly about garments, garment modification, DIY, lots of knitting, a little bit of spinning, and tutorials and things like that. So yeah, it's been really fun for me to do this. I'm closing in on the end of year 2, and you guys have all been super supportive and wonderful, and the community that we've built here is just so cool. So thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for the birthday wishes. Last episode I mentioned that it was my birthday in July and I got sheep for my birthday. Kind of. Anyway, you'd have to go back and watch the episode. But thank you for the birthday wishes, and I will be getting to your comments, which were all so fun to read, and I'll talk about the giveaway winners at the end. So for those of you who don't know, we've just recently moved to a farm out here. We've taken on some of my friend Kathy's sheep of Seven Sisters Farm, so they're pasturing out in our yard. And the last few episodes I've been filming outside because our house has not been set up. We've just kind of moved in, but we've been traveling so much that both my husband and I haven't been here together to kind of set up the house. So we put a hiatus on the travel for the last couple weeks, and we've been able to set up a lot of stuff, including the yarn room. So I'm filming inside again today, and I have a new light setup that I'm trying out. So we'll see how this goes. I'm trying that whole like look it up on YouTube and triangulate your light thing. I don't know. You'll tell me if it's working or not. I feel like it's giving me very rosy cheeks right now, which is an interesting look, I think. So what are we going to talk about today? Today's podcast is like really full. I was planning on casting a week ago, but there was a soccer tournament in Minneapolis that took a week. And there was some crazy knitting going on for a test knit, which I'll talk about. There was the waiting for the lighting rig. There was the weather, so I couldn't podcast outside because it was raining. Anyway, it's been a little bit epic the last little bit, so I'm here and I'm really happy to be here with you guys. On the episode today, I have this beautiful finished object, which is the Song and Dance Pullover by Albina McLaughlin of LB Handknits, which I'll be talking about. I also have a super cute work in progress that is by Susan B. Anderson, and I think you guys are gonna really like this one. What else have I got? I want to talk to you about the yarn shops in Minneapolis. I visited 2, and I have a super favorite yarn shop there now, so I'll talk about that. I've got, I received some really great correspondence from Misse in Denmark about the Faroese shawl book that I talked about a little while ago. And so I have a little bit of some of the images from the original book to show you that she was able to send over. So our rare and hard to find book series is working out. We're able to exchange some information, and if I have one book and you have another book, and we can share it, and that's been really working out pretty great. And I also have another book in that series for you guys. Not a book, but a magazine this time. For my birthday, Spencer picked up a whole stack of crazy old knitting magazines, so I'm going to show you a couple of those for the segment today. And then we have the giveaway winners, and I want to give a huge shout out to everybody who's been participating in the modification knit along for this year. It's still totally going on, and it will be until October. We have a thread for accessories and a thread for garments, so you can head on over to the Ravelry group and check it out there. And I'm going to show you a few of the beautiful garments that people have been working on today. And for those of you who are in those 2 threads, I'm going to do a drawing for a nice giveaway, a nice little basket of stuff. Some yarn, some little markers. I'll find some fun stuff to put in there. So a little giveaway for you guys who have been participating in that knit along this year so far, so stay tuned for that. Okay, all the basic other stuff. Let's see where you can find me. Knitting the Stash, just about everywhere, here on YouTube, on Ravelry, on Instagram, on the blog, which is knittingthestash.wordpress.com, and that's where I put all the show notes. If you're ever looking for pattern names or links or anything like that, you can head on over there and you'll find everything you need. So let's jump in with Song and Dance. Song and Dance is a beautiful top-down pullover sweater by Albina McLaughlin of Handknits, and she has just released it. It was scheduled to be released on August 3rd, but Albina just had a baby. Congratulations, Albina. I saw pictures this morning. She's beautiful, beautiful little baby. And I think both mom and baby are doing well. And she's like a superwoman because in the meantime, she managed to release this pattern. So she was like, I'm headed on to give birth, but here's the pattern that's released. So Albina, you're pretty amazing if you didn't already know that. So the Song and Dance Pullover is the official pattern of the Yarn Folk Festival, which is kind of the premier yarn folk festival or yarn festival in Northern Ireland. And I think if you're attending the festival, you'll receive this pattern for free as part of your festival package, which is pretty awesome. And if you're not, you can get it for a discount until August 3rd or August 5th. So I think as I put this podcast up, I think you'll still be able to get it at a discount. Albina has been publishing tons of patterns. I test knit for her all the time and sample knit for her. This is a version of the sweater that's knit in Let Lopey yarn, and she chose these colors, which I think is really, they're pretty cool colors, and they go together really well. And I'll tell you a few things about this pattern that are really fun, and I guess I'd rate it for like an advanced beginner or early intermediate knitter, because there are only these strips of color work that happen, and the rest of it is, you know, stockinette, and it's only 2 color color work, and you get a break, kind of rest period in between each color work section. What else can I tell you about this? It has, because it has these transition sections, Albina was able to work in short rows into the back here. So you'll see that this section is wider on the back than it is on the front. And the purpose of that, I've talked so many times about short rows on this podcast because they're like one of my favorite things ever. I think they're super functional, and they do a lot for you as a knitter. You can make things happen because of short rows. And adding short rows to the back means that the neck is going to be lifted up so that you're not going to end up with that choking kind of thing that can happen with sweaters. If you've ever had a sweater where you're wearing it and you're like constantly pulling on it, like, oh God, why is it always choking me? It's probably because there weren't short rows incorporated into the back when it was designed. So that's like a serious design feature. A really great thing to do. As you can probably tell, the amazing thing about this is that I have not washed this sweater yet. It's all been a little bit of a rush at the end, and so I wanted to be able to show it to you guys since the pattern is launching without having to wash it and wait for it to dry. So just know that in the future you'll see photos of it all washed and blocked and dried. What I will post on here though, as I usually do, are photos of me wearing it so you can see the fit. It's definitely a little bit oversized, which I like a lot. In this particular sweater because it just fits really nicely and it's very comfortable. Oftentimes I tend to knit more fitted garments, which are fine, but they're not, you don't always want a really fitted garment, depends on what you're wearing. This, because of the color work and because of the style, is more of like, I think of it as like a ski sweater or like a winter sweater you'd want to wear kind of hanging around on the weekend. And for that reason I'd want to be able to put a lot of clothes underneath it because I like to stay warm. So I'll show you, I'll put photographs in here of me wearing it and a couple photos from Albina's pattern release on Ravelry so that you can see her versions of it. Because you could knit this in so many different versions. You could do it in a 2-color, 3-color version so that you were using 2 colors for the color work and then 1 for the transition. This is more of like a 6-color version. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6-color version. And the pattern has instructions for both, like how to make the most of it. And the other thing about it is you could knit this in a bigger range of sizes than you might think. The color work tends to limit designers on size because of the number of repeats that have to be a certain number to make it work out, right? But Albina has great instructions in her pattern. So that I think she has 4 sizes, which range from 34 up to 54, I think. It's a pretty big range, but there are only 4 or 5 sizes in that range. And what she basically says in her instructions is if you want to knit a half size, say you know, you don't want a 34 and you don't want a 39, you want like a 36. You just change your needle size, which is what I did. So I ended up knitting the equivalent of about a 36 bust by going up a needle size. And actually I went up 2 needle sizes because I always have to go up 1 needle size to meet gauge for Albina's patterns. And that way you can knit a kind of half size without having to mess with the numbers on the colorwork chart. It's a pretty great feature of the pattern, and something good to know about colorwork in general. If you're working on a sweater with a yoke or a colorwork section and you're kind of like, God, I just wish it could be a couple inches bigger, you may be able to achieve that by just going up a needle size or 2, and that won't affect the fabric too much. So it's a nice tip. What else would I tell you about this sweater? It is, the colorwork chart is really easy to memorize and get into. It's a pretty straightforward colorwork chart in that you're never knitting more than 2 colors at once. And I've talked about how I knit colorwork on here. Someone in the comments from last episode asked if I'd do just a simple video of me knitting so that you guys could see what style I use when I knit. So I'm thinking now that I have my light rig in here and I can get a good table, then I think I should be able to shoot more tutorial videos more easily, and so maybe all of our dreams will come true. More of these videos, more knitting videos, right? Let's see, what else to tell you? It's definitely a good sweater to learn to knit your ends in as you go. I didn't do that, and so I do still have a few ends to knit in on this one. I'll give you the little reveal. There are a few little danglers hanging on here that need to be knit in, but I'll take care of that. Other things, it's just a fun pattern, and I would highly recommend it, especially if you're kind of new to colorwork and you want something that is going to come out easily and be kind of fun and be motivating. Like between sections, you're like, I want to finish this section because I get to the stockinette, and then I get to the next section, so it's totally worth it. And you'll see in the pictures that there's tons of ways to do the colors. So it's an awesome sweater, and thanks so much, Albina, for letting me be one of your testers again. Congratulations on the new baby and the new sweater baby. And I will post in the show notes and here, just so you have it, the pattern name and where to pick it up. So I usually don't show too many whips on here. I often just show you the finished object. But this guy, this next project, is just too cute to pass up. And this is Susan B. Anderson, and it's Panda. I've been just carrying this guy around because he's so cute. So Susan B. Anderson is well known for her little creatures and toys and things. And I knit her Spud and Chloe sheep Spud a while back because my friend Amy Cartwright was one of the illustrators for her book. And so Amy had a copy of the book, she gave it to me, and when Amy was designing the book, she didn't have a chance to, she got to see the little creatures, but she didn't get to keep them or anything. So I knit her up a version of Spud the sheep so that she would have something to remember the book process by. And so Susan B. Anderson is someone that I've been familiar with, and you guys probably are too. She has her own video cast that she does, and she's pretty prolific. She's often, there's little floaties in the air, she's often putting out new patterns, and they're often really cute and fun. So this is the Panda, which is just came out recently. And I say it's a whip because it's missing its legs. Its little legs will go here where these little pearl bumps are. Let's see if the camera will focus on it. So you see these little pearl bumps? That's where I'm going to pick up and do the legs, which look a lot like the arms. But it's a work in progress because not only are the legs missing, but it's missing its little sweater. It has a red sweater, which is so totally adorable. And that's why the arms and hands are stuffed, so that when I put the sweater on it, it'll actually sit like it has arms. The sweater has a little hood. It's really adorable. So this is one more present for our new little grandbaby that's going to be born at the end of August. And I wanted to have it all finished with the sweater and everything to deliver when we go down to visit once the baby's born. Lots of babies everywhere. So Panda will be one of those presents. I did embroidery for the face. So let's see if I'll replace my face with Panda face. So I embroidered the eyes and the nose and the little mouth. The ears and the arms and the tail, so cute, are all picked up, like I said. You pick up your stitches after you've knit the main body of the panda and just knit them in the round, finish them off. Everything's Kitchenered closed, and there you have it. Panda. I think it's almost cute enough without the sweater, but I think I have to knit the sweater because I'm a sweater knitter, and Panda needs a sweater. Panda might get cold over the winter. Yeah. The dogs think it's their dog toy, and I'm just like, no. So I've been keeping this on a very, very high shelf. Anyway, that's Panda for you. Susan B. Anderson, one of her latest knits, and I actually got the kit, so I'm knitting it out of the Barrett Wool, which is her line of yarn. And really, it's a beautiful, let me pull it out here. It's a beautiful yarn, very woolly. This is the red that the sweater will be knit in, which is a beautiful red. And it's actually held double for the sweater. So it's a fingering weight yarn held double. And yeah, and I'm just stuffing it with regular old polyfill. So that's about it. And I didn't do button eyes because of choking hazards, and I didn't do any of the like weighted beads because of choking hazards. So there you go, Panda Bear. He's coming at ya. So let's do a segment on Minneapolis and the yarn shops of Minneapolis, shall we? I was in Minneapolis for a week with Zach for a soccer tournament, and we've often talked about these as kind of like, we joked about them as our vacation in Minnesota. At least it was summertime, so it wasn't too cold. And we did soccer most days and went to a soccer game and tried to keep ourselves busy. Went to Mall of America, which was a wild experience, as everyone's always told me. And then on one day when we didn't have much to do, I said, hey Zach, we've been doing soccer like all week. Could we just do a little yarn for a day? And so we drove around town. We found a little vegan cupcake shop, which was awesome. And then we hit Knit and Bolt, and we went to Stephen B's. Both yarn shops are in Minneapolis, and I have to say that I fell in love with Knit and Bolt. Not to say Stephen B's isn't a cool yarn shop and it isn't a cool space and you should go, but of the two, I really like the vibe of Knit and Bolt. So let me tell you a little bit about both of them. And this is Knit and Bolt. And I'm trying to remember, I feel bad, but it was a couple weeks ago and I meant to podcast sooner so that I remember everything. I'm pretty sure the owner's name was Megan. I met her, she was very lovely. She's on Facebook a lot and Instagram, so you can check her out. She does some live videos, and you can kind of meet her that way if you can't get there in person. She's a fun personality and I really enjoyed meeting her. So here's all the info for Knit and Bolt, and I'll put this in the show notes as well. Let's see if the camera can handle it. There you go. So it's in a little neighborhood in Minneapolis, and it's a yarn shop that has both yarn and quilting supplies, so lots of fabric, thus Knit and Bolt. And one of the reasons I wanted to go to this particular shop was that I heard that she had a lot of like local yarn and kind of attention to the local, and that's one of the things that I really like to do when I go to a place, is like find out who the local dyers are, what the local yarn is, if people are raising sheep, are they selling the yarn in the shops, all that kind of good stuff. So she didn't disappoint, and Knit Bolt did not disappoint. When I asked her, I said, I heard you have local yarn here. She was like, it's that wall over there. So there's a huge wall of yarn. There were some beautiful skeins dyed by indie dyers. And I'll put in some photos here as I go. I think I remember taking photos of most of bits and pieces of the yarn shop. It was, like I said, a couple weeks ago now. And I picked up this beautiful skein from Lydia's Flock. It's Icelandic and Shetland blended together. And because I was working on this Lopi sweater, I thought, okay, perfect. I'll get a white skein of yarn, and then all the leftovers that I have I can use together to do some kind of like colorwork hat or mittens or something like that. So this was perfect. This is a single ply Lopi, 200 yards, and it is Shetland and Icelandic blended together, and 100% Minnesota grown, right? Local yarn. It's pretty awesome. And apparently Lydia's Flock has moved. I think they're in Washington now, but this was yarn from when they were in Minnesota. So that's pretty sweet. And then you guys know I've been looking for a dog sweater, and I've had some awesome recommendations from you guys in the community, and I received a wonderful set, like a recipe of instructions for a great dog sweater. So thank you all for those. I'm still kind of like poking around and looking, and I couldn't resist this when I saw it in the shop. So I picked up this pattern, which is a Blue Sky Fibers pattern for a really cute dog sweater, which I need to add to my queue for Tinky before it gets too past winter out here. So those are my two things that I bought, and I bought them from Knit and Bolt because I really like the vibe in there. It was a really sweet place to be, and Megan was really helpful. There was tons of fun stuff to look at. My son had a great time. They had stitch markers that were cut out that looked like the state of Minnesota. There was just like a ton of beautiful like fabric. I'm thinking of like those little, what are they called, quarter stacks? I can never think of what they're called. You know what I'm talking about, the little squares of fabric that you can buy in like a fat quarter. I'm so bad at this. I love sewing and quilting, but I know nothing about it. I just love the fabric. So Knit and Bolt, I would highly recommend it. Plus they're in this little neighborhood, so there's like a couple little cafes. Zach was able to get a bagel and some orange juice, and it was just like a nice street to kind of walk around on. It just was really comfortable and fun. Kind of near the university. It was just cool. I just really liked that one. The other one I visited was Stephen B's, and Stephen B's, I felt like it was kind of like one of those like Mecca yarn shop, kind of like if you're there you should go. So I went, and Zach went too, and we found it, and it's kind of this nondescript building. It had a couple yarn flags outside, but otherwise, you know, just kind of like it looked windowless and doorless almost. But we wandered in, and it's one of these yarn shops that's like 2 or 3 different floors of yarn. It's almost like going to a yarn festival, you know, like there's a sense that there are vendors from a bunch of different places there because he has yarn from a bunch of different indie dyers, especially on that open ground floor. And then upstairs he had felting supplies, sock yarns, cotton yarns, buttons, things like that. And I'll put in a few pictures here. Lots and lots of stuff. And the staff were really helpful. But it was just one of those shops where the reason I say I like Knit and Bolt a little bit more was that it just felt a little more like cozy and homey, and a little more like local. That's just something that adds my own preference. But that's not to say that Stephen B's didn't have awesome yarn. They just didn't have as much of the woolly stuff that I've been really into lately. They had a lot more of the kind of like funky cool indie dyer, which I'm also into. Some superwash yarns, things like that. And the reason that I'm less into those right now is just my stash is full. You know, I've got plenty of that stuff, and I haven't quite figured out all the things to do with it yet, whereas all my woolly yarn is getting used. I'm like knitting sweaters and knitting baby clothes and accessories and stuff. So it's, yeah, it's just a difference of like what you're into at the moment. And I think Stephen B's was a great experience because you could really, like, I got to see some of the brands and some of the indie dyers that I have seen online or known about, but not actually held in my hand. So that was really cool to be able to kind of check out what was going on there. He also had a huge sale table going on at that moment. I think it was like 25 or 30% off, tons of yarn. And it was like not just crappy yarn. It was like name brand indie dyer yarn. And had I needed any yarn, I might have been a little more tempted. But I did not bring home a massive suitcase of yarn. I just brought home the little skein and pattern from Knit and Bolt. So Stephen B's was cool. I took a lot of time looking through the buttons because that's one thing I really do love to do is when I find a yarn shop that has buttons, they're really great to kind of like see and feel and touch. Buying buttons online is one thing. It's great if you have to, but my preference is always to go buy buttons in the store. So I was kind of checking out all of his buttons, which was really fun, and checking out his little felted kits and creatures, which were upstairs, and they were really neat too. So I would recommend both shops. If you're looking for more of like a kind of like local woolly shop that has like different kinds of crafts, I would go for Knit and Bolt. If you're looking for like a little neighborhood to stroll around, things like that. And then Stephen B, if you're thinking like, gosh, there's a lot of indie dyers that I really want to see and hold and touch, go there. It's like a yarn festival. You'll find all your favorite kind of like indie dyers, and you can hold them in your hand and decide if you actually want to bring them home with you. So Minneapolis was actually a pretty great yarn scene, and I wish we had had a little more time to spend wandering around doing a little bit more, but I had so much fun at those two shops. So thank you both shops for having me in there and being welcoming and showing me so much beautiful yarn. That was awesome. So let's move on to our rare and hard to find knitting series. And as I said, for my birthday, Spencer got me a stack of vintage knitting magazines, and I thought I'd share a couple with you today. And what I'd like to think about with this little segment is just how much styling affects knitting. So we often look around, like I think about my pattern books that I have right now that are kind of contemporary, and I think, what are people going to think 20 or 40 years from now? Like when they look back, are they going to be like, what were the styling principles in action, you know, for 2020? You know, like what was going on there? Because for us, it looks absolutely normal, and I do this with my students too. I think it's really important to think about like what's normal for you now, and how is it hard to see that normal for what it might actually be. So in that vein, I have a Brunswick spotlights from the 1960s. I believe it's the 60s. Yeah, I think so. And I'm trying to keep my spotlights off the shiny cover, so I'll do my best here. The thing about the knits in this magazine is that they are totally normal, totally things that we would actually wear today. You know, this is probably, this is the 60s. You know, we're talking like 30, 40 years later, right? No, oh my God, 60 years later? I'm so bad at this. I do the math in my class. Sometimes my students are like, it is not 1994 anymore. And I'm just like, oh yeah, sorry about that. So anyway, these knits look totally normal. Let me show you. Like this guy on the front, this is a beautiful lace cardigan, or not cardigan, beautiful lace pullover. And there are a bunch in here that are just very simple, like these guys in the centerfold, of course. These guys in the centerfold are wearing pretty normal looking sweaters. I mean, there's some cables, there's some V-necks, there's some cardigan action going on, right? But it's the styling, right? It's the styling that totally dates the magazine. So there's this one, which I'm gonna stop talking because I don't even know what to say about some of these. Right? There's also this one, which I would have to say, like, not to date myself or my mom or my grandma, but my grandma is a hip lady. She's like pretty top notch of the fashion world. And I think I've seen her in photographs with hair like this wearing something very similar to this. So it's gonna make a comeback. I can just feel that. But this is a kind of wild looking style thing. But you could also see some of this stuff, like, I mean, even style-wise, like happening right now. So it's just a funky difference. One thing I would say is I think this photographer needs to get the kind of wind machine under control. So the amount of hair in the face in some of these patterns is pretty maximal. Here we go. Here's another one. Just turn down the wind machine, you know, just a little. But the knits themselves are totally chill, like both of these. This is a V-neck cardigan. Over here, cardigan, very cool. Like I would probably knit like 80% of the stuff in this magazine, and it would register as kind of like hip and cool right now, which I think it's kind of telling, right? If we are 60 years later, you just need to restyle, and it would actually look pretty contemporary. There's some funky stuff going on there, right? The patterns themselves are not charted. This is not the era of the chart. So what you get is pretty much, well, this kind of thing. Just straight up, everything's written out, no charts. So good luck trying to keep your place in this kind of pattern, right? I'd have sticky notes everywhere trying to decide where I was and to keep track of things. But you'd be making some pretty cool sweaters. So this is from the back cover. Yeah. Brunswick Spotlights is one of my favorite ones that he found in this pack of vintage knitting patterns. And maybe some of you have this in your collection. I'd love to know. And I'd love to know what you guys think about this difference between the actual knitting and then the styling, because I find so many of these just actually totally wearable. And I just think that like this, I feel like this sweater was actually in the most recent issue of Lane magazine. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of amazing to see things come back around so clearly. Yeah. And one addendum to our rare and hard to find book series is that after the episode on the Faroese shawls, a wonderful viewer named Misse Jensen got in touch, and she sent along a PDF of the original book. You might remember that I talked about the Faroese shawls, the kind of accompaniment, the translation, the English translation that kind of accompanied the main book. Well, Misse Jensen sent along a lot of photos from the original book so we could actually see what the shawls looked like. So what I'm going to do is pop on the screen a few of these photographs as screen captures so that you can see what they actually look like. The PDF that Misse sent is pretty extensive and includes a lot of the beautiful shawl patterns, and I think a lot of you would really think these shawl patterns are really quite cool. And as I'm talking, I'm hoping that I've put them up on the screen so that you can see them. They're both intricate and kind of very simple in a lot of different ways. They often have fringe attached to them. And as we talked about last time, the patterns seem to be kind of like these recipes, so that you get a sense of you're making something that others have made before, and the decisions that you're making are often about exactly how big it's going to be, where you're gonna stop your repeats, and what kinds of inches you're kind of looking for in your pattern. So thank you so much, Misse Jensen, for, I think I got the name right. I'm hoping I asked her how to pronounce it, and she sent along a wonderful video pronouncing your name for me, so I think I got it. So let's get to our giveaway winners, and then I'm going to talk about the giveaway for the Modification KAL that's going on. And you'll remember on the last episode, it was my birthday, so I was going to give away presents for everyone else. I was going to give away some of this beautiful Knit Crate Vitalana yarn, and this is the 48% merino wool, 20% baby alpaca, 32% cotton, kind of nice summery yarn in a beautiful summery kind of color. So these two skeins are gonna go to Tracy Brines, Tracy13 on Ravelry. And I've notified all the winners, so I just need your mailing address so I can get these out to you, and I hope you'll make something beautiful with them. And then the other prize was a couple of bags of spinning fiber. And someone suggested this might have been Gotland, and I'm not sure. It's definitely a low crimp kind of fiber, and I don't think it's a like one of Kathy's long wools or anything like that. Maybe Gotland, but this was the beautiful fiber, and I've got a couple bags of it. And the fiber is going to go to Lynn, and Lynn is Mum of Yarn Hungry Rabbit on YouTube. So Lynn, congratulations on winning a couple of bags of spinning fiber, and Tracy, congratulations on winning the yarn. And thanks to everyone who entered. I often run giveaways on here if you're new to the podcast, so stick around and there'll definitely be something else to win. Speaking of which, so as I said, we've been running this year-long modification knit along, and you can either, it's for both beginners and more advanced knitters. So if you're a beginner and you're just modifying an accessory pattern like a gloves or a hat or something small, a little baby outfit, something like that, you can get involved just as easily as someone who is modifying a whole sweater. And we have 2 threads on Ravelry. So what I'm going to do is we're getting close to the end of the year. We're into August. The end of the year is in October. So what I'd like to do is do a drawing by the next podcast. And what we'll do is, if you have a finished object in the thread, which there are so many beautiful finished objects, let me show you just a couple of them. But if you have a finished object in the thread, then you'll be entered to win a cool little gift basket of stuff. It'll have some yarn, it'll have some stitch markers, it'll have some other little fun things for you in there. And let me show you, this was from Small Donut on Ravelry. She entered the knit along with this beautiful At Dusk sweater, and she did some brilliant modifications to it. And she said she changed this to a top-down construction and reworked the numbers for a DK weight yarn. She did short rows for the upper back. Yeah. She used different kinds of increases, make one left and make one right instead of yarn overs. And she did 16 chevron panels instead of the total that was the pattern called for. So this is her final sweater. I'll show you another photo of it because it's just so gorgeous. I almost just need to go knit this sweater. It's so pretty. So, and this is from, as I said, Small Donut. And Small Donut, do you have your name on here, Small Donut? No, you don't have your name on here. I can't call you by name, but anyway, Small Donut did a beautiful, beautiful modification of her sweater. And there are just so many other ones in the thread. This one's from Shirley. And I want to show you this one, it's beautiful. She did, this is a swing vest by Nancy J. Thomas, and this is by Shirley Knits 123. And here's a picture of Shirley modeling it. Shirley did a gorgeous job on the modification for this garment, and she talks a little bit about it in the thread, and she said basically here, this is the summary, she added 17 extra ridges, 34 rows to side panels and triangle wedge short rows underneath armpit to chest area so stitches wouldn't stretch on the outfit. Brilliant modification. She said this pattern might be fine if it was originally designed for someone who was kind of like slim and boxy, but for anyone who has a little bit of curve, she said these are the modifications that would make it much better. So let me show you another shot of this. You can see it laid out there. It's a really beautiful, another chevron design. I love it. So thank you, Shirley, for participating in the thread and sharing that beautiful modification with us. There are tons of other really great modifications and good ideas in that thread. People who know what they're talking about when they're talking about knitting. So if you want to get in on it, if you just want some advice, if you just want to hang out with some other folks who are doing modifications, head over to those threads. And in a couple weeks, I will do a drawing for a little gift basket for somebody who has a finished object in either one of those threads as a thank you for participating in the knit along for this year. So yeah, I think, phew, that was a lot. That was a long one. I think that's it for this installment of the Knitting the Stash cast. It's lovely to have spent some time with you here. I wish you wonderful moments of knitting and spinning in the meantime, and I'm gonna check out the video on these lights and see what we're talking about. I think it worked out okay, and I'm hoping to get some more setup in here for these tutorial videos, so maybe you'll see more of those coming out soon. It was lovely to hang out with you guys. Take care until I see you again. Bye-bye.